books and publishes. This is called There Was a Skeleton in the Closet. It was pouring. I was glad I didn't have to go out. But it was cold, and I wished I had a sweater. We were in the cafeteria. The lights were off. We didn't have a whole lot to do. The fathers of some students came in. It was no big deal, but they somehow didn't seem satisfied. They hardly ever come by just to say hello. But this was a friendly visit. We had plenty of coffee, and plenty of people told stories. One of them had a picture of a lamb about to be slaughtered. A man was praying to the lamb while holding a knife behind his back. He told us that people sometimes still do this when they think no one is looking. What? I asked. Pray or kill or both? Both, he said, which is why the roofs of all the houses are topped with video cameras. We have to make sure nobody kills an animal in our neighborhood. Is that right? Someone said. It was the man everybody called Donkey Breath. He was reputed to be a secret meat eater. As a consequence, nobody respected him. Get out of here, Donkey Breath, the first man said. We don't allow your kind in private conversations. But I was curious. I didn't know very many meat eaters. Do you ever pray to the animals you eat, Donkey Breath? I asked. All the time, he said. Then he laughed. He pulled a hot dog out of his pocket. It was attached by a short string to another hot dog. That was attached to another. He laughed louder and pulled out more and more hot dogs. They piled up on the floor. He laughed such a disgusting donkey bray hee-haw that I couldn't help laughing also. The man whose daughter goes to our school turned red and walked out. Later we learned the hot dogs were tofu, which was still disgusting, but at least no animals lost their lives in the making of them. I'm going to read one now called Julio and the Stimulus Package. The stimulus package turned out to be an infection, a fevered adrenaline rush, and as long as there was no immediate threat, we'd go days thinking it was that simple. But what was it we did with that burst of hyperactivity? Build a time machine, an escape hatch to an alternate universe, a universal playpen, a new mask for a new mood on a new day, because we were scared of stagnant, rotten, same old death, and we were scared of perverted kitty porn and freak show drool. We were afraid of addiction, fetishes, food disorders, cruel, racist, black and white, all or nothing, guns before butter, root hog or die, stasis, paralysis, old age. Optimists say it's not so much running away from the real as building a bridge to the new. But no one's ever come back from the new to tell us how it is. So forgive us for being skeptics, especially when the adrenaline wore off and left us listless, and we couldn't help feeling disgusted. And there was a number to call when you started feeling that way, but all they did was tell you it's probably time to give it a rest. This one's called Planter. I was walking past the planter, fed up with the dirt and soil and two dwarf trees that shook every time a car drove by. It hung a good 3 feet above the slice of sidewalk that sloped to the curb, while most of the sidewalk was elevated. It looked ridiculous, hanging over the street with nothing to support it. There was something false pretending to be sturdy and substantial, if not exactly permanent, as if tempting the credulous among us to mistake it for something time-tested that could be trusted, a fixed box of curbside scenery, storefronts, and background. It struck me as dangerous, so dangerous I had to do something. I climbed inside and started digging, fed up with this accident waiting to happen. Town bosses wanted us not to worry, wanted us to leave it alone. I couldn't help it though. I had been manipulating my emotions just to be able to get along, but this was beyond control. I had to tear away the veneer we smear on dysfunction in family, education, and government, the privilege and permissiveness we use to hide our fear. So I dig it up. I dig up truth. To hell with Cuban pine. What's more important, truth or Cuban pine? I dig all the way to the false bottom and punch a hole in it. It's a heart-shaped hole, a total coincidence, just the way the dirt and rotten wood came out. And the truth came out. The box was dangerous. A small child playing in it could have fallen to the street. So I should feel better. I ripped the social fabric, defaced the urban aesthetic. Even if I don't get caught, I daily have to live with the mess. It's ugly. Worse than that, irrelevant. It means nothing, achieves nothing. It's destructive. Naked truth sucks. That's why we can't get along in schools and politics. We strip away civilizing norms. I should never have done it. The naked truth's an eyesore, a disorder. I feel like hell exposing it. I'd cover it up again if I could. No one got hurt the way things were. Who's to say some kid won't fall through now? Old-time detective story. When they told him to empty his pockets, he assumed they were looking for drugs. He'd never have guessed they wanted his phone. They said he had a map on it he had no business with. Only people with top government clearance are allowed to even know it exists. We want you to tell us, Mr. Goebel, how you got it. Goebel thought of joking that it must be either a treasure map or something to do with terror. I don't know what you guys are talking about, he said. I bought this phone at Radio Shack about 2 years back. And where is that Radio Shack now, the tall one with the shades asked. Closed last year, Goebel said. Very convenient, the short man said. Convenient for what, Goebel wanted to know. I have to drive all the way to Vermont to get it serviced. Both agents smiled. I'll tell you what I think, the tall one said. I think you hacked a government site to steal this map. I think that when we stopped you, you were on your way to a facility where the country stashes spent uranium. What on earth would I do with that, Goebel asked. He tried to smile, but nobody was smiling. Dirty underwear bombs, short man said. I'll wager you're wearing one as we speak. Goebel swallowed hard. Okay, here's one called My Blue Peninsula. In late adolescence, I chilled with Scylla and kicked it with Charybdis, but I always hoofed it home by curfew. My folks were not adventurous. They spent decades dovetailing shifts, he on days and she on nights like clockwork, which is what I fell in line with once I learned to shake a leg. I offered to ante up carting cut paper bait pails and eel crates over land. They said I had to do it nights. That was decades ago. I still don't have my circadian rhythms, my faith in endorphins and taste buds. Happiness clogs pores, undermines the cuticles, and peels the skin from holes in my alibi. You need wits to skirt sand traps, solid footing on parallel keels. Dissatisfaction's the beginning of beginning. Dissimulation step 2. When exhilaration threatens, I button my greatcoat, aim the nearest speedboat at the sirens, and drown them in sing-song, fleck their spiral jetty with foam. A couple of short ones, a couple more. This one's called Come Out and Fight Like a Man. Why won't they come out and fight like men? There's graffiti on the Underpass, some of it legible, not as stylized as 80s stuff. You had to be in the gang or on a task force to catch the drift of that glyph. The spirit of competition's at it after decades of collaborating. Now collaborating's something you and a friend do to hurt someone else. Competition's different. It's a Tupperware demo where participants forge political affiliations and paramilitary lip balm. They won't succumb to the come-ons of their ass-kissing cousins. There have been times when they let their hair down, but they outgrew those infantile urges. They're so evolved they're barely sentient, like mutations in your coliform head count. They purge it if it didn't keep you pumping. One more. This one's called Airport. Oversized touchscreens on the concourse showed so much more than departures in ETAs. Pull-down tabs let viewers scroll through television programs by town. Oh look, Brockton has Mary Hartman. Lanesboro, Captain Kangaroo. I know there's porn in Petersham. No discreet way to check it though. Besides, the airport's fascinating. Sprawling vistas, swirly world traffic, cars and planes that fly themselves, cutting up so close, one behind the other, something they could never do with humans at the controls. Too many accidents with all the bright lights and futuristic buzz. Someone mentioned that the government is helping people further their education rather than making this place even bigger and brighter, and that has some folks hissing. I defend the program, albeit in a shaky voice. I say, my mother argued a case before a federal judge this very day, having recently passed the Connecticut bar, all because of new educational funding. Someone asks how old my mother is. I say 80. That part at least is true. Thank you. And I'm supposed to announce the next person. Pat Goodshift is next. Thank you.
Hello. It's okay, it happens all the time. I'm Kat Goodshift. And I'm going to read you in honor of spring on this beautiful day that we just had.
Still having.
That's right. A series of poems that I am working on. It might be a book, I'm not quite sure yet. It might become an art installation if I can find an illustrator, we'll see. But it has to do with all kinds of plants and flowers throughout the year. There are 11 of them, but don't worry, they're mostly pretty short. And there's kind of a little short story that introduces them. So this is Indian Paintbrush. Spring in the high desert is a misleading season. There's plenty of warmth, but few blossoms. The young woman walked for hours across a mesa and found only a red Indian paintbrush. The flowers said, "You're not from around here. Do you know what you've gotten into?" She ignored this because she was in love with the young man. It sounded good, and someone had said that that was supposed to happen. In November, the young woman followed the young man to his home on the coast. When they walked along the beach, the wind blew fiercely off the gray and unsympathetic ocean. She heard the Douglas firs saying, "What is she doing? She does not belong here." Where was home? She didn't know. But she bought a bus ticket and headed east, hoping that eventually some tree or flower would tell her that she'd come to a suitable place. And this is beets. Yeah. If you slice a beet kind of horizontally, it has rings, kind of like tree rings, if you haven't noticed that already. If this beet did not grow for years, what is the meaning of these rings? Tangent to this cross-cut galaxy, a shoot extends white spasms of growth. Is it a crime to be so deeply hued, so crisp, so crossing over the sweet threshold? My heart also circles, is lopsided, has messy roots. And this is coconut. She was house-sitting in an apartment overlooking the Hudson. I bought a coconut and wine with my fake ID. "I'm not really into butch femme," she said. "I prefer to think of it as lover-beloved." Although it was clear she was the lover and I was the beloved, I was also the one who found a hammer and smashed the coconut open. And this is Snowdrop. It's been a hard winter. As the new season breaks open, like always, I kneel to see your face unfurl. If I believed in time, stones, and perfection, I wouldn't need your petals curl. But I don't, and I do. So I seek you out, even though my loss of you begins as soon as you appear. Witch hazel. In November, you can still find dandelions blooming, half buried in dirt and gravel by the road. In the woods, witch hazel waves gnarled petals every cockeyed way at the sky. Bare, gray, or brown is everywhere you look, except for these tiny yellow messages. Autumn apple tree. As fallen apples rot, only bees remember their beginnings as flowers. Each blossom kissed 5 times, pollinated repeatedly, or else withered and gone. Now bees return for cider no one else wants, warm in the waning sun. Daffodils. They had yellow hearts or a midnight sheen. Some of them were seasick green. They bared fiery teeth, showed petticoats and moon-colored wings. Every winter, Dad and I chose more of them from a catalog. Better than a clock, they marked the time every spring. On dewy blue mornings I went out, sliced through crunch of stem, crammed all the color I could into a jar. I brought them to school, carried them from class to class, studied them instead of books. They had rain inside and out. My life was so boring. The stalks leaked and drank when I cut them. I had no idea how lucky I was. This is 4-leaf clover. At night, the houseplants in the kitchen would sleep too. The violet with its mouth open, dusty leaves, purple snores. The miniature rose that never bloomed. And the shamrock, its leaves a collection of awkward moths. During the day, it spread green and purple wings toward the light. At night, it shut tight, as if something had happened. Poppies. Seed-filled goblets rattle hallucinatory sounds all winter until the greening of the year. Hairy eggs pop, orange-robed monks unfold paper lanterns to cup the hurried sun. Before placing them in water, fire must be applied to the stems. Otherwise, the girls who pluck these dreams gather nothing but wilt. Skunk cabbage. Anything can happen in the woods. Your dog might chase after deer. You may find a witch's cabin and get stuck there for 10 years. In such a dark place, seasons are meaningless. The only way to mark days is to count your heartbeats 15 at a time. When you can't count any higher, you'll be completely lost, except for the part of you that keeps running with the dog. Who wins? Who dies? It's not over yet. If you get too tired, the muck will swallow your bones, and the work of the witch will be complete. But the creatures are still running, and even witches grow old. Someday you may flower and unfurl leaves, turning the mucky place into some kind of garden. Blueberries. I was sent to summer camp. We made things, bracelets, a teepee. We swam and sang. Every Saturday, a yellow school bus took us with our brown bag PB&Js to the foot of a mountain. The exertion of hiking separated the customary clusters of girls. My feet learned about rocks. I saw strange trees and even made a friend. At the top, there was more sunshine than we knew what to do with, and handfuls of tiny, tart blueberries from scrubby bushes. Was everything in the world designed to care for us? We left our orange peels on the rocks. And the last one is corn. The Midwest, where she's from, is a giant cornfield. Row after row, mile after mile, it goes on forever. And the roads, they don't turn or wind, only go on, and occasionally intersect. There's nothing to do except work and drink and look at the sky. They had to invent entertainment from cans, sandpaper, and screws. Whereas the East is full of bends in the road, hot dog vendors, the Liberty Bell, drive through a pine forest over a rise, and all of a sudden you're at the edge of the continent. When she first saw the ocean, she told me she couldn't believe the waves never stopped. Even at night, you can hear and see their motion. It's an entirely different type of forever. Thank you. And next up, we have David Miller.
Hi everyone, thank you all for being here. Thanks to Elizabeth for organizing this, and I'm glad to be reading with everyone else who's reading tonight. A while back I learned the phrase, the 2-poem warning, which is something that poets do. I've done it, where there's 2 poems left, and so they say, I've got 2 poems left. So now I'm going to start off by giving you the 7-poem warning, and you can count back from there. This first one is something out of childhood and also something a little bit about writing, titled Sister Earthworm. An earthworm breaches the surface of the pitched hillside where a boy sits, knees up, sneakers braced against a grass-stained slide to the street. The creature stops the boy's breath, not from fright, but from greeting. Child zoologist, his glass-jarred toad dreams in alcohol. A real cat skull from a specimen jar rains on the shelf. Today, the surge of a worm to his side. The boy runs to his room knowing this joy could be written. Some exact words about Sister Earthworm. Grasping pencil, he turns into a child, too consciously thinking himself as a child inspired to write what a child would write if a child were inspired. He gapes at the paper, writes nothing, goes back outside. For 5 decades, he wonders what he could say for a single stray earthworm in spring, unaware of him, both above ground in the shade. I'll read a few things, mix of some things from loose pieces of paper and also from my chapbook, The After Images, which came out last year. And this one invites a slight bit of audience participation. So probably most people know, maybe everyone, but maybe not everyone. There's the show, the game show Wheel of Fortune. You know, at the beginning of the show, everyone yells out Wheel of Fortune. Okay, there's a point in the poem where it'll be evident. I want you to yell out Wheel of Fortune. So let's try it now. So you're warmed up, very simple. Don't worry, I'm not going to say to you louder, louder. Just try it. Okay, so ready? And Wheel of Fortune! Excellent. This is titled Two Elderly Women. 2 elderly women are invited to seek medical attention if an erection persists for more than 4 hours. One appears not to hear, asleep in her chair, head in hand, or gazing hour upon hour at some nothing nearby. My mother is the other one, and has heard it before, will hear it again. As the couple on screen, 15 years her junior, discover their special moment. Eyes locked, they set down their paint rollers, ambling dream-wise toward a meadowed El Dorado, as made over kitchen walls gently give way, drifting to the ground, revealing the grassy sward, the arched and branching bowers of their not as elderly as all that desire. Today is the silent roommate's birthday. 2 balloons tied to her chair, a celebrating sign on the door, and an upright male visitor with whom phrases, low and few, are exchanged. Later, during Wheel of Fortune, she will lift her hand to bat at one balloon a half dozen times. But now, as we prepare for lunch, another woman, 10 years my mother's junior, speaks to us from the screen, looks deep into our eyes, expresses, uttering her inexpressible gratitude that hospice allowed her own mother to die at home. It was, she tells us, her own life's most beautiful moment. Our roommate is wheeled wordlessly toward assisted dining. We journey the other way, past the one who from her room cries, "Help!" to the place set aside for those who dine self-sufficiently at present. Medical malpractice messages, diabetes warnings, and the happiness of a retiree whose brand new motor chair allows her to fold her own laundry from her own dryer follow at our backs. I spend a lot of time on public transportation in Boston and the area. So that pops up a fair amount. And this first one, or this next one, is titled Absolutely No Idea. "Sorry," she grins to the young beard at her right after twice rolling toward him. "Sorry." The beard smiles, doesn't mind the low, sleeveless, diaphanous whatever. "Sorry," to the dude with earbuds at her left after half leaning over his lap. Man 2 scowls toward the off-campus short shorts. "You keep saying sorry." Her voice at her friend on the phone flows toward tears. Doesn't break though. 1, 2 subway stops, 3. Each time she half leans up, asks, "Where is this?" Standy woman in front of her rides the car floor as if it were Tuesday, not party night, which it is. Asks what sorry girl wants, where she's going, what exactly she's doing. Harvard Square she wants. The wrong line, wrong direction, wrong all of it. Out across the next station platform, having processed more than one verbal instruction, we hope. She, unrooted, too easily stripped by the eye. I want her parents. The backseat of their car. Her sprawled asleep in a drive home past her bedtime after ice cream. There's an ice cream place on Route 10 here between East Hampton and Northampton, and if it's the same place or there was an earlier place when I was a kid growing up in Amherst, and that's the very place I had in mind when I wrote that poem. Continuing on the T, on buses actually. Drifting. She arcs forward, doubling over so gently her forehead comes to rest on my knee. It could be sweet, but this is not a person I actually know. I'm sitting at the front of the bus in a sideways facing seat. She's next to me, facing forward, but now face down, an island in the sea of grocery bags, left where she abandoned them while drifting from the door to her place here, forehead against me. "Hello? Hello there?" I tap and pat her back. She's not decrepit, nor is my personal space involved. It's something other. Her head touches my leg, an objective condition, that's all. The rest are watching. Concern, amusement, or that, my God, what now look of exasperation. Her hand, descended to the bottom of a bag at her feet, opens, closes vaguely like the mouth of a fish. It's crowded and people will fall over her groceries. I take the largest bag, stuffed with toilet paper, place it on my seat, move to an empty spot behind her. The driver pulls over, walks back, bends down to see if she's all right. From out of the depths, she answers, "I'm fine. I'm just putting my head down." Now she begins a series of slow-motion arcs, rising to look out the front window, sinking back into her seat, dropping her head in one continuous 16 RPM movement. Glimpse of saturated color, a spring bouquet tattooed near the base of her spine. After a half dozen undulations, she says, "Next stop, please." Next stop, it takes the driver and one other passenger, making sure she grasps all 6 or 7 bags before she sleepwalks to the door and onto the sidewalk. We travel on. Across the aisle, a male passenger declares, "OxyContin. I don't know why they give people that stuff." I'm thinking of her, floating toward home, head to the ground among the snowdrifts, trailing clouds of groceries and bags full of bags. If you were at the Meat for Tea Circ last month, you may have heard this if you were in the room. So apologies for repetition. This is titled The Huffington Post or Whatever. You could let your eyesight cling a long time to the 1940s portrait of their engaged, beaming faces. Temples nuzzled for the studio photographer, her navy collar and his navy collar and her pearl earrings, their dreamland smiles. And you will definitely back to it after checking out this thing about this white, most beautiful girl in the world who was only 9 years old, but probably not the celebrity next link over who went from hot to heavy in kind of the same bikini, at least according to the photograph. You could sink into the image of them in their narrow beds pushed together, dying 5 hours apart at home, holding hands till the husband went, releasing the clasp of his wife with dementia, and wonder what she knew in that moment. And this is a sad thing to you, as is the whole idea of a 3-year-old boy frozen to death, locked outside in a diaper. I mean, there are some people you will just never understand. And it turns out the Pimp My Ride cars were just totally faked up after all. You could make yourself realize that 67 years of marriage through kidney failure and Alzheimer's smashes anyone's old-fangled cynicism, that sterile, world-weary stunt, and how I can't live without you is a literal truth woven into 10 braided fingers. And that the 5 famous on-screen couples who didn't like each other in real life might have been happier if there were a way to regrow lost hair. Though this might not have helped the stay-at-home mom who unloads about, "My husband was my rapist." Why don't you know why Reese Witherspoon's black and white Oscars dress looked so familiar? Why did you miss this year's saddest Oscars moment? Why don't you pay more attention? You let it all slide right by you, like how terrific Keira Knightley looked at the Oscars, pregnant. 2 caskets at the funeral home, their daughter's tears, and do sweethearts have our song anymore, like when he was in the service? You'll ponder this again. And a quick moment for this other thing, losing 15 years of mortgage payments with only one dirty little secret. This next one, since about 1997, before I started writing things that I think of as poems proper, I've been doing spoken word pieces, or I had been doing spoken word pieces, based on material found in a fairly well-known area paper's police report. I am not the only person to have mined this particular police report for art material. I know of at least 2 others, but this is all found material. And I'll only say that all of the phrases and sentences are as found. So this is constructed, perhaps, maybe not written, at least built. And it's titled, "A Suspicious Pail Filled with a White Rose, Rice, and Eggs." Police told the resident that the duck season has begun. The man was ducking his head down and yelling, "Incoming fire!" He was concerned after 2 placing cards were placed inside his mailbox. The man refused medical treatment, telling police, "I am not a rat." About a dozen people tried to get into his apartment to watch television. The man was not injured and doesn't remember what happened. Residents reciting poetry were issued a verbal warning by police. The TV guide they received had a strange odor coming from it. The residents called back to report hearing strange noises outside the home and slices of bologna placed on their car. Police said that the noise heard was just the wind. Police determined that the wind had knocked over the glass head. She heard a person in an adjacent apartment screaming about being killed. A neighbor was trying to kidnap her and threatened her through the ceiling, walls, and garbage disposal. Someone entered her apartment while she was asleep and colored her television set with a crayon. The front tire on her vehicle was damaged, and its hood was covered with clams, wine, and vinegar. A suspicious man told the store's clerk that he needed to purchase eggnog to prevent the effects of the poison his wife was giving him. The man said he had been naked earlier because his pants are toxic. He was harassed by a neighbor who was stuffing nickels and dimes beneath his door. The man was upset that the store did not sell eggnog. Police gave the man gloves, $2 for a cup of coffee, and allowed him to continue his activity. Noise of a personal nature was reported to police. A resident reported hearing glass popping and breaking. The sound was made by a hamster that her husband had brought home without her knowledge. The noise was coming from her electric toothbrush spinning inside a cup. This noise has been an ongoing problem. Onions and cucumbers were thrown at the home. Someone poured olive oil throughout the front floor. A screen door was damaged by corn and ketchup thrown at it during a food fight. The combatants were actually just two people dancing. A child reported home alone was actually an adult who was okay. The police found he was actually drinking water and eating some bread. Police determined that the man was just an insurance adjuster. The man was just keeping his phone off the hook. He was just mapping the stars on his laptop computer. He was just observing mushrooms. And I'll conclude with a very short one. Titled, The Next Moment. Last night's raindrops cluster across the glass, beaded inversions of the house opposite. Wooden clapper lightly touches two metal chimes the next moment. Breeze passes across my forearms. Is it mist? Is it rain or fog? Or is it just my eyes? Thank you. And the next reader is, pardon me, Stephanie Baird. Stephanie Baird.
Thank you. Oops, okay. So yes, I have to always shorten this a little bit. Just wanted to say thank you to Elizabeth for inviting me, and really appreciate that. And also just want to say a couple things about how I've known her for many years now, and she's always been very encouraging. I have some poems and Meat for Teas going back many years, which is very nice to be able to say that, and just wanted to express appreciation. So I'll be reading a couple poems from some Meat for Tea issues, and then a couple other poems coming out, kind of well, let me just say that her encouragement in me has given me the confidence to kind of try to spread my wings a little bit and, apply to other journals. So I have some poems coming out in non-Pioneer Valley journals too, which is exciting. So it's good. Okay, so we'll just start with kind of a fun poem to read that was in a Meat for Tea from a couple years ago, 2013. This one's called The Fantastical Narwhal. And also, I've practiced a lot trying to read slowly, but if I fall off the wagon, please just people tell me to slow down again. So I'm a very fast talker, so just tell me to slow down. Okay, The Fantastical Narwhal. How the hell did I never hear tell of the fantastical narwhal? I saw the ornament in a fancy catalog and thought it was a gimmick to tickle our dollars with overpriced whimsy. Upon telling my husband of the silly unicorned whale, he revealed how North Pole narwhals exist aplenty, and how he could keep this from me, Miss Must-Know-It-All, for nearly a decade is what I can't fathom. Of course, when I finally learned to confirm the truth, those expensive ornaments had disappeared from the catalog. Someone once told me that you could slow time by having new experiences. You have to focus harder when you try something new. However, it seemed time sped up the moment I encountered fantastical narwhals and confirmed their existence. Perhaps if I had journeyed to the North Pole, laid my eyes on this creature, a decade would recede, tides returned to the sea, leaving narwhals in their quake for my 29-year-old self. 39 is much too old to discover such a beast. And in case you didn't know, any journey across time and sea includes silver zeppelins, husky dog sledding, a boat with an ice cutter, beef jerky and whale blubber, oranges to prevent scurvy, as many Honeycrisp apples as one can carry, and a dozen hard-boiled duck eggs cushioned in bubble wrap. We'd rappel up ice edges and skim down cliffs, wearing double-wicking socks and fur-lined Macintoshes.
All these new things should surely slow time, perhaps halting the world for one eternal moment, when I can finally meet this so-called narwhal without ornament. And then here's my next poem. So just so you know, a lot of my poems feature my muse, which is my husband, who's an artist. So just get that out of the way. So this one's called The Welders Footprint. Open the bulkhead, unearth an engine. It's a tiny engine, not even sure what kind, black with rusty edges, oily gears, left here by the previous owner, a welder. The machine sits beneath the stairs, a dutiful dog awaiting instruction, holding life in the balance. My husband paints engines, draws blueprints in gouache and oil, carefully mocks up schemata of motion with paintbrush precision. He leaves his mark on creation in the guise of cogs and goalies. The welder and his drunken sons left their mark. His wooden lacquered wedding day picture of winning destruction, we sealed bride and groom behind drywall for the next inhabitants to discover. Hand-sweeping ceiling beams, we found jars of long, corroded nails, more evidence of metal love. Shelved an old hiker's map of the Holyoke Range. Our property hangs just over the notch. I wonder about decisions of eradication. What parts of self do we leave behind? What gets destroyed? What comes with us into our next lives? I bury old, irrelevant keys. Destroying them brings bad luck, I've been told. Amusingly, these keys turn up perennially when planting pansies, violas, and primrose. I'm too lazy to push those metal bits deep or fling them to our backwoods for proper burial, dogged buggers. My engine has other needs to push. Let me unearth old artifacts, maps, nails, wooden pictures, and 1,000 more keys. Let me gaze upon my husband's worlds, brimming with mechanism, pipe, connection. Let me decide what to leave behind, bequeathing the welder's footprint for the one after me to find. And then continuing on with my husband, the muse, this poem is called Quebec City Graffiti, and it's about Quebec and our relationship. But so Quebec City Graffiti. Trompe-l'oeil underpasses funnel other worlds. One raised foot turns the keyhole, blasts windows between atoms. Paint bends parabolic archways into treetop canopies. Ships wreck on their urban shores. Alien faces stare from cement walls, hooded in calligraphic spray paint. Discovering this graffiti alley was a gift, heightening our engagement with Quebec as we breathed fumes of clandestine creation. No longer new, our journey was still young. Years later, I stumbled upon the photographs, that brisk fall day of weaving between arches, as we walked from the inn to Quebec's ancient wall, wending our way between worlds. No longer single, not yet engaged. I'd expected you to propose during our 5-course meal at La Pêche de Vanille. We both wore our favorite fancy clothes, lingering over wine and bread. We looked each other over and imagined making a life together, even after you stained your white shirt with the heaviest of French sauce. It wasn't until the drive home, after a heated tussle over finances, that our talk turned to marriage. No obvious avoidance. We were simply skittish and stubborn. As we approached the American border, we romantically confessed that your comfort with our quotidian argument made it possible to imagine a lifetime together, full of token quarreling, which you didn't mind a bit. It's been a long time since we happened upon that graffiti gallery. A house is purchased, a baby made, art shown, and poems written. We still notice art in unusual places, but no longer discern every mark on our bodies, although I have made some dermatological appointments concerned about some moles. But really, the mole that concerns me most is the beauty spot above our child's bum. Lying above the plumber's line, off-center, below the arch of her back, sits a most lovely dot of pinkish red, the same color of the autumn leaves she noticed as we breakfast on the deck. She called them flowers. Her mark, this genetic graffiti, may bring too many choices of love to her. Hidden Morse code, it will surprise others, shipwrecking some along the way. Perhaps she will choose mates as we did, lovers of graffiti and comfortable quarreling. And then now, so moving on to my daughter as a muse as well, so husband and then now daughter. This one's called The Sun, and this is coming out in Slab, which is, I think, with the Pennsylvania College Journal. Okay. I swallowed the sun, spoke Lyra, avoiding trouble. And by the way, she's about 4 right now, so she was about 3 when I wrote this. She joked about mouthing pennies and paper clips, which I harshly chastised, and suggested she eat something silly, like an elephant, balloon, or cat. Taking my lead, she almost blurted she had a coin in her mouth, but turned the dime on its head and out came the sun. I swallowed the sun. Riffing, I rejoined, "Oh no, where did the light go? I can't see, everything's dark." Slyly unbolting her mouth a bit, she blasted me with lightning. I bathed in her radiance and ordered more. Her mouth opened wide, and out poured the cosmos. And then I knew our origin story, how we were made in light, emerged from the dark, formed effortlessly by stars, and meant to shine. All brilliant constellations bursting the brave night sky, like Lyra gushing the sun. And then a couple more. So this also, again, has my husband in it, so sorry. Probably tired of hearing about him. And this, curiously, I kind of went on a one-night alone retreat in this cabin that we go to every winter. And what do? I write about a poem about my husband. So, cabin plus love. Up in the rafters, declarations of love wallpaper the cabin. Black Sharpie ink, carvings on dark logs, permutations of hearts and words, dates and names, color curved wood. Sam hearts Eva, 2001. BG plus LL. Katie plus John, undated. Sam loves Jessica forever. Then, curiously, names are blacked out, some with Sharpie, others knifed with pens. Impulsively declared loves are smoothed in wide swaths, like a river cutting into her valley for the first time, lazy dervish. Why not replace pluses with minuses? There might be a market for such additions. Sam and Cabin 5 changed minds and loves faster than snowfall dresses fir trees or mental changes hands. A case of too many great loves over the years. Let's hope neither Eva nor Jessica ended up on Sam's body, forever after needled timestamps, barcodes of haste. Perhaps the new ranger expunges cabin graffiti, erasing avowals with his weekly sweeping and turnover. Signs are visibly posted, pleading inhabitants not to deface. Indeed, everyone has the right to change one's mind, be fully present with their latest love, declaring her heartfelt and true, "This is my forever plus one," circled by expanding cartoonish rings of hearts. Sometimes one must erase the past to make the present stand out. I too want to declare my love in the rafters. After all, Ben and I have been coming here for over a decade. There's our first cabin kiss down by the river, wood burned and razor sharp, etched in memory. Verticals of ice cling to his pepper red mustache, impossible to break despite locked lips. I think I shall wait till my hand can barely hold a pen steady. That way my pronouncement shall be the truest of them all. And then moving on to a couple quick short ones, and then we'll be at the last one. So this is a poem about robots. I, Robot Broker, that's the name of the poem. At my 6th Christmas, I received an inflatable male robot and female plastic doll. Both were my height, life-size. They kept me company better than my bully brother or father. Ben, at 6, received Japanese Apology full metal robots, made a grand tool belt for the apocalypse, and dug a grave under couch cushions. There was a funeral, after all, his parents' marriage. Lyra, at 3, plays with Ben's robotic artifacts, plants tools in her waistband, and struts around favored with the right stuff. With 6 grandparents, she has all the company in the world. I, at 40, broker used robots as needed, retaining a silver box of broken legs and arms in the bedroom, and giant full metal Japanese bots in reserve, buried. Hopefully Lyra needn't excavate them from their closet grave. And then this second to last poem, this is about spring. So that'll be nice to read this here. And it's actually like I think it's called an ekphrasis poem, where you sort of look at a work of art and then write from that. And in this, it was a picture of this very bright orange, it's called like a cosmos sulfur flower, which means friendship flower, against a very bright blue sky. So to marry the cosmos. Like a fancy hole punch plucked from the crafter's hoard, orange petals rip open the sky. Earth strains to marry the cosmos, pushing up a fresh bouquet for the occasion. Clouds shriver and shrink, slink away from this forceful sulfur. Petals cavort with the atmosphere's edge. Laying in fields of spring, I bask in Adam's complicated cuddle, peeking through persimmon papier-mâché. There, covered with orange paper cutouts, I wait for the next big bang. And then my last poem, which was in A Meat for Tea, and this is actually my very favorite poem that Elizabeth has ever published, of mine in A Meat for Tea. The wonderful works in all the Meat for Teas, but my particular favorite. So this is called Jug Handles and Slingshots. Centrifugal ventriloquist shooting muons. We slingshot around the jug handle. How did folks get their kicks before cars? Joyrides on black buggies and mottled horses, hanging over the edge by a slim leather stirrup, mumbled air bubbles escaping via squeaky burps, landing 10 feet away, separated from birth. Yep, I like a fast slingshot, a fast jug handle, a fast ride. I'll go anywhere. Shoot to the moon, hang from a horse, hold tight to a buggy top flapping in the wind, like some laundered, tornado-tossed gingham shirt. And I like how you take it slow, take the corners slow, take a lazy drive to the sun, no longer a boomerang, just an easy meander down Jug Handle Lane. This way, I can get a good long look at it all, see tiny bright muons where streaks once lived, see a star before it shoots, see the faintest horse hair, up close and personal, touch the black hole's edge. Just don't list us over the mumbling rumble strips. We're on a mission together, you know, combining fast and slow, bright and dark, tame and wild, muons and eons. Let's see how it goes. Thank you so much. And the next reader, though, is Ben Hersey.
Remember when we were tiny? Remember being tiny and rounded and you couldn't be seen? Small fry. Remember the past? Dude. Remember the agitated symbol? Are you not enough for you to me yet? Aren't it frowned upon to be happy? Are we in the ancient place? Are we sickly 'cause we a bad boy? Are you a bad boy, old timer? Are you a bad girl, bad boy? Are there divine forces at the heart of the conflict? Have we become contaminated by the savage environment? Is increased Mather's concern that we have degenerated to a place no different from beasts valid? Do beasts practice mutilation of the dead? Are you died yet? Did you die in yet? Are you dead? Dude, you died. Died? No, dead. Dead? Dude, you doing it. You lost it. It's over. Does every mutilating action compromise my identity as an Irishman? If I'm still alive, what kind of permit should I sign up for? Is it time to get a fishing license? Could I take to the trout stream? Could I become one with the current? Someone told me once you could make a pornography film by the trout stream. It was so quiet and private. Can I copulate with the demon in your pantsuit? Hello? Member? Dude, do you remember? Remember when this was the devil's territory, dude? The devil was here. Where in your body do you feel that? When you're alone in your room, do you go like this? After the night is done and you left the social engagement and the work environment, are you at home in front of the mirror? Is that how you relax? Is your hip bone a fireplace like mine? Is it the sight of your ancestor standing by the flame? Your ancestor, the all too famous Indian killer? The colonel? The one who revenged his parents, his scalped parents, to such efficiency that he became known as Jeremiah the Avenger? There he is, the monster, warming his casing by the fire. When down the chimney appears the devil, somehow able to not smut his shoulder ruffles in the slightest. Did your ancestor make a deal with the devil in your body? Are you so fucking unredeemable that you are invisible? You're unredeemable? Are you still thinking about your pool hall days? Poontang pool hall days? Are you eating a snake in the bathroom? Jelly Roll Morton album cover for a plate? You are not Mary Rowlandson anymore, are you? Go ahead. Continue on. Keep complicating things. Remain unresolved. We like you that way. You're a problem, and we like it that way. Something's wrong, and that's okay. There's a problem here. If you want some advice, I'd say get yourself a hawk feather and bathe in it. Bathe in the hawk feather, wash yourself in it. Reduce yourself to praying in front of a turtle shell. It's a New England vibration. It feels pretty good. Go ahead, keep going, people. Keep cruising. I like it here. I like being part of your myth. You're a fucking myth maker. You're good at it. Your myth is my dream, and it's populating my head. I'm a fucking character in your story. It's where I belong. I'm into it. I'm absorbed by the fucking flow of the narrative, too. You did this. You made this happen. And you did a good job. Continue to live in your body. Thanks. Give it up for amazing Carolyn Zykowski.
Hello. I can't believe I have to follow Ben. My name is Carolyn Zykowski, in case you didn't hear. I'm gonna read two short poems, two little shorteroonies, that's what I like to call them. Then I'm gonna read something slightly longer. Okay, this poem is called Donut Boat. The best kind of holy shit is being in a body. Let's. Don't fart around like a donut boat filled with hot dogs and dull knives. Be a huge tree. Be a yam or other root vegetable. Go to the other shore. This poem is called Don't Actually Bury Yourself. Don't actually bury yourself. The world needs you. Use your tongue. Okay. This is an interview that I made up. It's called Interview. Okay. Interviewer. Please speak carefully into this microphone. It is the most sensitive microphone that exists. My first question is, tell me about your mother's memories, which you may or may not hold inside of your own body, muscles, aorta, etc. Subject. The memory of my mother's first pencil, or when she was 7 and her parents sent her to the neighbor's house at night so they could go to wherever it is you go to identify the dead body of a loved one. I remember the shape of the room where she painted nudes in art school and what the bus smelled like upon which she met my dad. I think it smelled like diesel mixed with some baked goods that resonated in her nose from that morning. I think, perhaps, her roommate had baked apple pie. I remember where she was standing when and if my father threw a beer can at her, hit her in the room with all the couches watching. A face, a squished face my mother wanted to make at the person selling coffee and banana bread in the cafeteria at the office building, 1979. She never ended up making that face because she felt shame for the compulsion, even though everyone around her wished that somebody would open the door to that type of clownery just once. In that place where nothing seemed to live, a path to the city of her dreams is made of time and tubes. This I know for sure. The color of her right hand clenching God as she birthed my older brother. I sat on top of the windowsill watching, and this was before disco. Wait, I mean, they would have been playing disco in that room if it existed, right? Interviewer, right. Tell me about your own entirety. Subject. In London, my grandmother watched bombs scatter from far away. She sold pounds and pounds of sugar and gallons of milk to the city folk. Back then, everybody saved their buttons and their string. She touches my cheek, and her soft skin is a tarp of time, and she remembers her husband is dying in her wrinkles and bunions. She never speaks of him, but wants to. I remember how my mother's ankles and feet flew. Her heart cracked out a symphony, and she ran out of the room because her father was dead on the bottom stair. His head was under a painting. Was it one of her own paintings? I do not remember whether or not she went to the neighbor's house this time. I remember when my mother was 8, 9, 10. The lake house in Maine hadn't been hit by the legendary hurricane yet. Nobody knew yet. I waited for myself and it to arrive. It's weird for a hurricane to get all the way to Maine. The trees are still there. Well, a couple of them. Actually, no. Mostly that forest is populated by jet skis and rich people now. That forest in Maine where the hurricane made it at last. And I remember the color of my mother's shoes when she married my father in the backyard of my grandmother's house. But I cannot tell you about that color. The only hint I will give you is that it is not the same color as the shoes she wore to court to sign divorce papers on Valentine's Day a few days later. When she got married in the yard, I'm pretty sure she looked at the black ring around the oak tree and recalled the summer of the gypsy moths. My mother, she doesn't know whether or not she remembers certain things, but I will keep it all for her. If she doesn't want to hold it, I'll keep it in case she wants to paint, destroy, remember, deny, change it, think it. In case she wants to pummel it with all the rocks and flaming arrows, like I want to, whenever I think about the universe and its various hands hurting her. Interviewer, is that all of everything? Subject, it's not even a little bit. Look, my grandmother's hair was brown when my mom was born. It was even brown when I was born, and she was always tall. My grandmother says she used to be 5'7", then she was 5'4". Since all of the operations, she's 5'1". My grandmother's back is slowly breaking. 4 of her vertebrae have slipped apart like pants being unzipped. The only thing that's in my control now is my own ability to sit next to her. That's the only thing that's ever been in my control, which is really terrible in a wonderful way. My grandmother likes her white hair. When 2 months ago I asked her, "What's one thing you like about yourself?" That's what she said, "My white hair. I feel so liberated now that I've stopped dyeing it." Interviewer, and what of your own body's relationship to change? Subject, I was small, silent, and female, and my greatest achievement was my long blonde hair. At 13, I cut it off and dyed it blue. My family still asks me when I'm going to grow it back. I tell them when they read my novel. I don't really tell them that. Interviewer, what does your body say? Subject, I don't know what my body says. I don't listen to it. I don't know where my body would go if it could ask. My teeth want to tell a story, but I disregard them. One of my teeth has a hole in it, and if you look real close, you can see the inside. Generally, I tend to swivel into the position which finds me. My body's voices are indistinguishable from laughter, pain, and numbness. I would like for somebody to give me a bar to hold that is attached to something other than my own body so that I don't ever have to float alone again. Actually, it could be that none of what I just said is true. Interviewer, so then, challenge God. Subject, okay. I challenge God to a game of Parcheesi with my grandmother. Him against us. No, wait. I challenge God to a write-off. I challenge God to a duel, which involves the fate of man's relationship with himself, by which I mean to men's relationship with themselves. I challenge God to drink whiskey with me. Does God drink whiskey? I've never thought about that before. If not, then what's his drink of choice? I'm willing to bet it's water. I bet God doesn't drink bottled water because I bet God knows plastic water bottles are a waste and that recycling, while good in some respects, is really just a liberal environmentalist band-aid on what's pretty much like an arm that's fallen off a body, dangling by a string of flesh, and you can't fix that with a band-aid unless you have a big-ass band-aid. Interviewer, we've got to move on. Please, speak to me about air. Listen. From a cough, you get eternity. From a cough, right into eternity. From a cough, into space. From a cough, into syntax. From a cough, I blow a butterfly towards an orange. Interviewer, reply to your breath. Relate to it as simply as you can. Subject, I can't do that. Interviewer, why? Subject, I'm scared. Interviewer, fill your space with words. Subject, no. Interviewer, let me put this differently. Transmit your experience through sound. Subject, fine. Interviewer, are you ready to experience whatever happens? Subject, I'm not sure, but I don't have much of a choice. If whatever is going to happen happens anyway, so my answer has to be yes. Interviewer, tell me a story. Subject, in New Hampshire, I saw lichen on a rock. This is a true story that happened. Thank you. Thank you. I have a book that was published in 2013, a novel. If anybody who wants to buy it, have some. And thank you. Please welcome Connolly Ryan, our next reader.
Thank you for spelling my name right.
It was about time we did.
No, her. All right. This beer is very, very good and tasty, and consequently, I'm overconfident. In fact, I'm going to have you yell out, "Surreal misfortune!" every other moment. Not positive, but almost certain. I killed a man in the dark on the train last night. Pretty certain he was in the Klan, but not positive. Spouting like a racist teapot about affirmative this and welfare that. Actually, he may have been speaking French or Canadian or Vermont. But he was definitely wearing a white hood, though there's the off-white chance that this was his snow-white hair. At any rate, there was undeniably a swastika swaddling his forearm. Or at the very least, a Yankees logo, which, let's face it, looks exactly like a swastika trying to pass itself off as a menorah on Judgment Day. Either way, he is dead for sure, or at least in a semi-coma, yelping meekly for a word that sure sounds like help, but could be code for something uglier. It's called a lobotomy in the blue velvet tracksuit. Is it dinner time yet? For God's sakes, is it? He drools into his denim gunny sack, gumped onto a bus stop bench. He looks to even the score with God. But how does one reconcile with an imbecile? From his pork-colored trilby to his Loganberry brogans, he is one bad haircut away from inciting a celestial hemorrhage. Children point at his scar and cheer. Ne'er-do-wells orbit around him, collecting confidence. He calls himself Dan, but his birth certificate knows better. His name is Broken Orphan, or Vague Disaster, or something like that human wreckage is what he amounts to. The sum of all nasty moments that have ever been. He likes being tickled, but no one ever does. Launched into anonymity the night he was squeezed from his dying mother and onto a halfway home throw rug, raised by raised eyebrows and a secret cluster of priests. His days were numbered before he learned letters. His only crime, of course, was invisibility and the isolation which succeeds it. But if you're looking to pity him, don't bother, for he is nobody's brother or son or companion. He is barely even an appendage of life. Like a warped coupon, his death certificate waits in a room for him to expire. Its laughter keeping it company, like a bluebird deflating in a bored cat's mouth. I don't write this shit, it writes me, so I don't even bother applauding. Some of it's funny, some of it's grim. I appreciate if you laugh at the grim and stare traumatized at the funny. My son and I at the supper table tonight. Me. I reckon Ma done whipped us up both a good eating soup this evening, son. I second that reckon, Pa. You done reckon when you're done with dinner, you'll hightail it up to your boy space and churn out yonder homework teachers say you've been neglecting so your future took a little better to your mother and me? Suck that noise, Pops. Teacher's just jelly as a rattler due to the testicular wherewithal emanating from my self-galvanizing whatnot. Your whatnot? Negatron, my whatnot with a silent K. Boy, I'll slide a silent K into your navel and spin it like a horn knob. You correct my English, Gan, here. Dang, Pa, you needn't get your Santa all in a Satan sack. I already done my homework in homeroom while getting a Hummer from a Hammer Time throwback / homeschool dropout. Boy, I don't know what you're saying half the Jesus time, but it is vividly evident that your irreverence has reached an elevated level, and for that I'm proud. I third that turd. What, you? Cue up Benny Hill music, the flash of kitchen knives, assorted hijinks, random maw shrieks, gratuitous laugh track, hilarious amputations, John Boy whispering goodnight, and dear old Auntie God shushing out the Yankee Candle as she drools the world to sleep. Thank you. A night of many nights. I'm giving a 74 poem warning. I'll rapid fire through them, don't worry. They made love all night long for 45 minutes. Endless innuendo and a blinding game of love knife, which the windows watched with interest. Her little teeth, flecked with, was it spirulina or some other superfood, sold only in obscure kiosks by women raised near a river. The immaculate economy of his thrusts, the heaving variety of her tiny screams. She squeezed until he grew distanter and distanter from his inhibitions and became a marvelous adventurer of madcap intensities. A kind of Jacques Cousteau meets Inspector Clouseau, plumbing her hydrangea depths with slapstick punctiliousness, rendering her brain a stowaway on a forgotten Twain sloop. In the morning, a few songbirds, guitar strings, and underthings was all that remained of them. I like to tell you things. I like to tell you things like the day I helped the blind duck across the bike path and into the waiting pond, or the time I bought my mom a bouquet of zinnias she fell asleep gazing at. I like to give you glimpses of people at their best, like the man in the park who was whistling along with the birds and whose face was familiar as a tea kettle and whose eyes were made, I think, of birds. I like when you tell me stuff you ponder in the wee hours, like if shadows have muscle memories, or if planet Earth is just a single eye on the peacock tail of the universe, or what a lullaby might sound like to a stillborn on its birthday. I like when you take me places I can't really see as much as witness with my entire being, like the crestfallen world an angry mob is heading towards every time it answers itself without thought. I like the way we like to say and feel whatever is keeping us or waking us up in the middle of the night, like the fear that mankind, or as E. Cummings put it, man unkind, has fallen, alas, asleep at the wheel of his own awakening. But I especially like that we find a way to bolster our solace by turning our minds to the bodies of little things, like a leaf on its way to re-entering the soil, or how the sun glimmer on the swinging bird feeder is the voice of God made visible. This one's called The Evidence is In. Snow is a buffer against the emptying of time. I'm trying to sound deep in this shit. Bear with me. Rain is a voice loneliness has grown accustomed to. The mind is a birdhouse built by itself, but illumined by communal things. Death is an exercise in exactitude and really little else. Life is a portioning of painful instances in pleasure's company. Mystery is a fact free from constraints of intellect. Beauty has no problem revealing its secrets to God's most broken creatures. Vulnerability is to wisdom what sunlight is to continuing. Music is a measuring of the ecstasy silence can no longer contain. Quiet is the moss by the lagoon on which ambitions come to rest their surging hearts. I feel tender sometimes. Bartender, get me another vulnerability. She falls asleep, honey, and wakes up sugar. Her cat is what cats are to a lover of cats. A ball of sinewy yarn and eyes green enough to camp out in. When the teapot whistles, it whistles of a husband many lands away. Or it whistles of sisters she trusts exist, but who she's never seen. In her garden, she is bending the way garden things bend. Deeply, sleepily, allied with tendrils and a flood with unfolding petals. At the bird feeder, she admires the entourage of little bodies that arrive in inevitable waves, lending her daydreams a downy inducement to encourage bird-like ideas to come and go as they please. No need to explain, because that's what the silence is for. And when she breaks the silence, she does so with what scholars would call breathtaking distinction, and what a scientist might call an helical elasticity, or what poets refer to as a tracery of diaphanous intuitions. But what we who know better would call the sound beauty and intelligence make when they are not at war. For fuck's sake. This is called monosyllabic syncopations, which is a polysyllabic rhetoric for one-syllable words. You and dirt are the same, and this is good. The sky has a way of love that you can too. All there is to do is just what the trees have done for years and years, which is not bend in vain. The trees are steeped in hope and what birds say. Your dogs and cats know the truth of you. They read the stops and starts of your fears and joys and can see how deep and sunk and broke you feel at the day's end. The time has come and gone, but more than that, it is still here. The time, so do not fret or moan, just touch the face of each place you go, and the sun will trail you like a best friend, and so will rain. Most of all, the moon and moss and grass and, well, all things that grow and glow will help you seek and find what death hides in the small parts of lives that know that they know not much at all. Dense with light, you will learn to fall in and out of step with God's or God, who is, it more than seems, not the sum of gods, or not the sum of good or bad, nor the drag of shame and hate on one's cursed heart, but is the brisk surge of grace and poise that comes of a good night's sleep and a day well spent on the verge of tears in a world of trees. Thank you. All right, now it gets funny again. Ducks in a row. This is just a dialogue between two ducks. Your beak is askew. Who asked you? Your head's not green enough. Envious much? Why the elongated agony? Ever try being friends with you? This lake's too circular, said the square to his groovy companion. Did you hear that enormous beaver splash? That's what she said. Everything about you is ordinary. Well, isn't that the mallet calling the mallard mundane? Your comebacks lack courage. Your opinions lack IQ points. What's your opinion on feminism? I would tell you if you male ducks ceased gang raping us for 1 minute. True story. Who is your hero? Anyone who has never had to listen to you? What name do you prefer, Daffy or Donald? Like Socrates, I prefer nothing. Just call me Ducrates, biatch. Do humans amuse you? Only when they are trying to shoot you. I feel I am the only one taking our relationship seriously. Why don't you go quack yourself in a corner then? Ducks are more punk rock than all other aquatics. That's the first sign of intelligence you've displayed all day. Now that we agree on something, what's next? Go quack each other off in a secluded cavern, I suppose. Sounds like a plan, said the machine to the cliche. Must you be such a perfect bastard? Why don't you go ask your father? A brief and vicious entanglement ensues, in which both ducks emerge humbled and slightly mangled. Now, where were we? Everywhere and nowhere at once, just like your mama's virginity. Let's just agree to disagree. Nah, let's just embowel to disembowel. The two ducks commence to lock beaks and die horribly entwined. How am I doing time? Ish? Still got 7 minutes?
My bracelet says nothing. Wait,
The couple who lives inside all couples. If you're a couple, these guys inhabit you. Nothing you can fucking do, just deal with it. The promises had been made, but were too delicate to be made good on. All would be shattered if either party acted with anything but impossible restraint or unimaginable abandon. His grizzled lens, her need to be sad, the host of devastating intangibles and squandered prospects drugging their stabs at clarity. As a young man, he'd reveled in the sanctity of anticipation. and as a less young man, he mostly glowered in its afterglow. When she was young, she wore her damage like elegant earrings, and now they weighed on her like underwater hemorrhages, weightless forms of agony and longing. On their first date, they sang Beck songs on the firefly-soaked bridge, knocking back bottles of Brooklyn, not as good as this beer, and shedding their defenses at the same rate as the evening shedding moments, or the river under them, letting go of its definitions and connotations. Last night marked a decade of their shared intelligence, and they celebrated it in a somnolent mood on their porch swing, studying the stuttering lightning bugs and noting separately how reluctant their illuminations now seemed, almost as if they too sensed the disappearance of intimacy from the world and the grinding fragmentation of promises the world had once made to itself and to all who had loved it. A couple more and then we're through. All paths point to sociopath.
True.
I know. And yeah. Studies show the sociopath is 1/100th of the world's population, which goes to show why 99 people out of 100 are either always afraid or perilously naive. He is minus the particular neurotransmitters necessary to stimulate empathy and or precipitate animus. If you are donning an object that is shiny and that he covets, for instance, he is missing the machinery to negotiate a mutually beneficial transaction, such as money or flattery, and he will simply snag the bling from your person and walk away. And if he damages your jugular in the process, he will lose no sleep that evening or the next. In whatever narrative of victimization you subsequently convey to him, he will look at you oddly and wonder vaguely if you have more shiny items hiding in your home, perhaps in your lingerie closet, or behind the pictures of your children you keep on your nightstand. Sentimentality, you see, is not his forte. But if you smile at him, he will calculate the emotion of your gesture and mimic it verbatim. For he is an excellent study and savvy chameleon whose resounding imperative is self-preservation. Whether chiming in with happy birthday at his grandfather's 80th or picking off toddlers as they flee the preschool he set afire. His facial expression is a miracle of uniformity, not unlike Columbus's or Cromwell's or the Columbine shooters, or perhaps the very one you happened across in the mirror this morning, with a masterful blend of vanity and indifference. Thanks! There's always one sociopath who applauds me outing them. Let's see. All right. Couple more. Come on. First day of spring in bloody New England. You guys remember the first day of spring when it fucking snowed? That was amazing. What a moment. The snowdrops got pummeled by actual flakes. I get that the groundhog didn't see its shadow, but when I look out my window, I can't see the ground. Yo-Yo Ma's cello strains in my ears notwithstanding, there is nothing spring-like about this frigid drear. Actually, aside from my naive expectations and preternatural sense of civilized entitlement, the snowfall is dreamlike as usual, taking its sweet time to float downward in artful mockery of all the hurrying humans neck-deep in suppressed panic and pointless hullabaloo. And the snow, of course, is not uncaring at all. Rather, it makes its rounds like a selfless nurse or transcendent Samaritan, icy now, but soon to thaw and morph into seepage, keeping its promise to the soil and the dependence thereof. Snowflakes gradually translate into meltwater, which daffodils, crocuses, tulips, snowdrops, and yes, even a flower aptly named Glory of the Snow drink up like glassy milk and begin their gorgeous upsurge from the loam. And so, with her signature symmetry, nature provides the narrative from which all great narratives are forged, from Plato's allegory to the cave to Booker T. Washington's Up from Slavery. From descent cometh ascent. From bitter cold comes the colors of warmth. From chaos springs clarity. And from, are you fucking seriously telling me it's snowing on the first day of spring? Arise the promise of irises and orchids and all other harbingers of, I can't believe how perfect it feels to just stand barefoot in the fucking grass. I'm skipping one here. Do I have room for one more or two? It's up to you guys.
Two.
Wow. It's a special number. Okay. The last day of the first month. Icy gusts, this is a kind of sentimental meditation of my dying mother. It happens. Okay. Icy gusts make short work of pretty thoughts and faces on this last day of January. A call from your helpless mother leaves you bewildered and used up by something grimly familiar but nameless nonetheless. Like a herd of dying beasts, the gales blast against your house, traumatizing the framework, forging an erasure. Your mother said she dreamed you were crying in a ditch and that only she could hear you but could not move. You try to console her by insisting how happy you are now happier you are now than you've ever been. But your mother says, no, you don't see. You can't possibly see how alone I always am in my dreams and out of them. You can hear the same predatory winds behind her on the phone that you hear outside your house. And this fills you with unbearable dread. And you say, Mom, are you all right? But she can't hear you. Okay. And last one, art is for the birds. If you listen really closely to the tweets of particular birds, you can decipher a sentiment of sorts that artistically wavers between lament and hooray, dirge and resurgence, in a way that human artists just can't. A few of the masters got close, but when they got too close, they exploded. It is a shame and a pity that a nearby canvas did not attempt to cradle the grisly yield of their exploding, thereby composing that proverbial masterpiece that had evaded them for all their lives. I guess canvases are not that ambitious. Great. Thank you, guys.
Don't forget to write the poem on the tricycle bomb. Don't forget to write the poem on the 134 Tibetans who have set themselves on fire since 2009, protesting against increasingly repressive Chinese policies. Don't forget to write the poem on the Syrian gunman who broke the hands of an artist as a warning. Don't forget to write the poem on Detroit, where Frida Kahlo miscarried. Don't forget to write the poem on last Sunday's obituary. Designer of sneaker brand Vans, expert on Navajo blankets, translator of Italian poetry, creator of synthetic skin. Don't forget to write the poem on the slurred voice of Michael Jackson, captured on audio, that helped sway Judge to give Doc jail. Don't forget to write the poem on the increase in hate crimes against the Sikh community since 9/11. Aggressors, sometimes mistaking them for Muslims. Don't forget to write the poem on the correct pronunciation of Sikh. It's pronounced sick. Sick. This one is entitled 733 Iroquois Killed in January. Buffalo, AP. At least 733 Iroquois were killed during violence in January, not including casualties from an embattled western province, the Six Nations said on Saturday. Most of the victims, 618 or 84%, were civilians. The other 115 were members of the security forces. The figures issued by the Six Nations mission to the Iroquois excluded deaths in the Ontario province because officials could not verify the status of those killed. The mission said in a statement. They also excluded insurgent deaths. At least 1,229 more Iroquois were wounded last month, the statement said. Buffalo was the most affected city, with 297 people killed and 585 wounded. Just yesterday, a powerful bomb went off near an outdoor market in the southern suburbs of Buffalo, the police said, killing 2 people and wounding 8. Separately, a roadside bomb hit an army patrol in the Niagara area just north of Buffalo, killing 1 soldier and wounding 5 others. God boy. Thousands have flocked to see a baby born with 4 arms and 4 legs. The baby, dubbed God Boy, resembles Brahma, the Hindu god. The village is being overrun by curious believers from across the region. Police say they're having trouble controlling the crowds. When we first heard about God Boy, we were skeptics. The nurses said he was badly deformed, but I could see this was a sign from God. Police say this is a freak baby and it's tragic. There is nothing godly about him at all. The birth defect is actually the result of the remains of the baby's twin being joined in him in the womb, according to medics. A condition referred to as a parasitic twin, partially encased in a living fetus, the twin never fully develops. Hundreds are crying in the streets, setting up camp here, praying. It's only natural that people want to see God baby. This is entitled Pre-Existing Condition. This is a Buddhist poem. Acne, AIDS, alcohol abuser, artificial joints, bipolar disorder, cancer, dementia, diabetes, domestic violence, Down syndrome, drug abuse, electroconvulsive therapy, emphysema, fertility treatment, gastric bypass, heart attack, HIV, infertility treatment, insulin use, kidney failure, leukemia, liver failure, muscular dystrophy, neuropathy, obesity, organ transplant, pacemakers, Parkinson's disease, personality disorder, pregnancy, quadriplegia, rape, rheumatoid arthritis, schizophrenia, sleep apnea, smoking, stroke, suicide attempt, Tourette's syndrome, transsexualism, tuberculosis, valve replacement, undiagnosed symptoms. Oh, this is a new one. All right. It's titled Pieces of Eight. Waves crashing coast, ripping ships and boats into pieces, sending souls onto hostile beaches. Sending gold, silver, jewels to the bottom of seas and driving trees far below beyond all possible reaches. 300 years later, I've got pieces of eight. Filling up my pockets, Lord, and isn't it great? Now everybody's looking for a piece of the cake. Chunk of the weight, pieces of eight. Once below decks, now around our necks, status symbols keep us real and refreshingly simple. Minded, we are blinded by the glitter of diamonds, now blindsided by the sky's darkness on the horizon. 300 years later, I've got pieces of eight. Filling up my pockets, Lord, and isn't it great? Now everybody's looking for a piece of the cake, a chunk of the weight, pieces of eight. travel down to depths for their masters, risking death for potential disaster. Reach the surface with their lives and a handful of gold. Realize the master is themselves to link their souls in the soul. 300 years later, I've got pieces of eight, filling up my pockets, Lord, and isn't it great? Now everybody's looking for a piece of the cake, chunk of the weight, pieces of eight. 300 years later, I've got pieces of eight, filling up my pockets, Lord, and isn't it great? Now everybody's looking for a piece of the cake, chunk of the weight, pieces of eight. Last one.
Yeah.
The last Indian on Nantucket. A Wampanoag. Abram Quarry was the last Indian on Nantucket. He threw the tourists clam bakes. He sold dried flowers. On Sunday afternoons, the supermarket, the price of meat, it kills you. Thank you.
So, thank you so much for coming out to Poems and Pints. I hope you had a really amazing time. I feel like I just can't follow any of that up with anything. So I don't think I should even try. So I probably won't. Thanks so much for coming out. I think everyone's amazing. Give it all up for everyone.